Hello from Inspire Legal at New York Law School in New York City, New York. I'm Laurence Colletti.
I'm Christian Lang.
And we're on the road with Legal Talk Network. And we're back. I'm here at New York Law School in New York City, New York. There's lots of New York going on there with Christian Lang, a longtime friend of the networks, and we're at your conference. So Inspire Legal, thank you for inviting us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and probably because it's only my conference in the absolute loosest sense. The reason why I think it's off to such a great start is because there's so many interesting people involved.
Well, it looks great. We were checking out the grouping of people coming here, the people that are supporting it, presenting it, moderating it. Very impressive lineup. Congratulations on that.
Thanks so much. I really can't take a lot of credit. There were so many wonderful people who kind of bought into the vision and put their hands up and were like, I'm happy to help. And they reached out to other, it kind of activated these nodes, and they reached out to other people and said, you really should come be a part of this dialogue. And next thing you know, I turn around and through just an incredible set of friends, we have a roster of like 50 of some of the most interesting thinkers in the legal space.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. I know you're running on a couple hours of sleep, fueled mostly on caffeine and adrenaline, but tell us a little bit about the history of how all this came together.
So most relevant probably, for the last year and a half, I've been running a community here in New York called the New York Legal Tech Meetup. And our kind of mission is to try to do what we need to do to help support the ecosystem here in New York. And a lot of that entails trying to have conversations and do things in a way that's not really commercially incentivizable. It doesn't really have a business model behind it because we think that's what's needed. No one does it because they can't make money off it. So we try to do the cool stuff that needs to be done even if you can't make money off it. We host those things monthly, but there's been this kind of nebulous aspiration to do a larger event at some point in the future, and that kind of crystallized in a very unexpected way just a couple of months ago. And with some great partners, we were able to find some funding, even though, we had this vision it was all about like, let's avoid the sales completely. Let's put together a dialogue that brings together people from different parts of this balkanized legal ecosystem who might be addressing common challenges, bring them together to achieve that cross-fertilization and focus exclusively on problems and challenges that need to be addressed and more well understood and more richly and deeply understood in order to set up the solutions, instead of, as is typical of the trade show-like conference, a focus on the sales and the solutions themselves. So, that's a bit of a tough sell to walk to a sponsor and say, hey, don't talk about your stuff. We're not trying to, don't sell anything, but help us make this happen. We found some incredible partners in the legal managed services folks at Thomson Reuters and Clifford Chance, who just have this wonderful, broad, long-term view of innovation, who are willing to support this. And we started working with some people, just ideating, thinking about how would we put this dialogue together and what would be worth doing. So that's kind of the genesis. And this all started rolling, in earnest about 8 weeks ago. And,
wow.
And given the holidays, it literally has been the last 3 or 4 weeks. This all kind of came together.
That is impressive, Christian. That kind of timeline, especially through the holidays, that is absolutely amazing. I have noticed it's very interactive, and so you've got the unpanel, which I don't know what an unpanel is. You've got forum workshops, but it seems to be that the driving force is pushing people together and causing interaction. Yeah. So was that part of the plan originally, or is that something that just sort of organically came together?
Yeah, no, it was pretty central to the plan, but it's evolved. So we're essentially trying to do something here that's not just having a chat. We're actually trying to create a couple of outputs. So we want to essentially create something that was originally branded the Legal Problems Report. Now, it's come to my attention from the experts who do this sort of workshopping that shouldn't characterize things as problems. It's not a great idea. You should be thinking about challenges or things. So, who knows where the branding lands. But the concept here is let's come up with a crowdsourced and curated list of the most pressing problems facing the legal industry. And those could be very specific, like obstacles standing between us and a high magnitude change in one space. Or it could be something that is actually a common challenge that manifests in different ways in a bunch of different spaces. And therefore, if you solve it, it has a really huge impact. So we wanted to put together this report and get that crowdsourcing mechanism. And we also wanted to find those interesting challenges that even if they're not super thorny, no one's acted on them yet. So let's create a request for startups list. And so legal innovators can kind of hit the ground running, pick up a ball and run with it. So, that's kind of how we're organizing this entire enterprise.
So I noticed you're tackling some pretty broad topics. So I saw market efficiency, biz model and pricing, KM, expertise, process and collaboration, data insight, tech adoption, talent training. I think there was one more. I couldn't quite see it across the room, but very broad array of topics, and looks like a lot of great thought leaders in the room.
Totally. Well, see, and then this takes us back to the unpanel point. We got a couple of different crowdsourcing mechanics here, one of which every person who is in this room is coming to this conference as part of the registration process. I mean, everyone from like the dean of X law school or the managing partner of Y law firm down to the law students had to submit a problem statement, like a 1 to 3 sentence statement of a challenge that they thought needed to be addressed. So we're able to take the temperature of what's on the front of people's minds, at least with respect to these 200 people. And for the unpanels, the idea here was we have such an interesting collection of thought leaders together. We should have substantive conversations. But I wanted those conversations to not devolve into that typical speaker-listener dynamic where you're just kind of sitting in the audience. I wanted them to be collaborative and interactive. But other than that, I literally just wanted to empower these interesting people to have the conversations they wanted. So having dialogues with the folks who are going to kind of join us and help run this show, and seeing the problems that came in, just kind of organically identified some broad kind of categories that there seemed to be interest in and interest that cut across legal segment. So that's what's kind of driving the train and setting up those categories, which are responsive essentially to what's on people's minds. And we're hopeful on the end of all this stuff, we're going to take these problem statements and the work we do in the workshop, and we're going to put them all on the wall and get people to crowdsource another time, like with voting, with stickers and the whole 9 yards, and basically try to get some sort of crowd wisdom as to what's the most important thing.
So we've learned a little bit about the what. We've learned a little bit about the how. So how about let's talk about the who. So I saw a very impressive lineup of guests. I saw a very impressive lineup of moderators and presenters and supporters. Let's talk about who you've invited to be part of this experience.
Yeah, it's turned into a really fascinating cross-section. So, we're sitting here at the beginning of lunch. In about 45 minutes, we're having a little fireside chat with, for example, Ralph Baxter, who was the chairman of ORIC for a very long time and took them from a smaller firm with a much smaller reach to the incredible international firm we know and love today. And Augie Rakow, who's the head of legal and co-founder of Atrium, the venture-backed law firm co-founded by Justin Kahn out in the Valley, right? So they represent kind of two really interesting perspectives on legal innovation. We have incredible representation from the Legal Academy, Bill Henderson, Dan Rodriguez, Dan Lina, Hari Osofsky. We've got some incredible thinkers from Legal Academy, and it's kind of helping to stitch it all together. I've got a bunch of just kind of friends and colleagues who are instrumental and thinkers and doers and founders in the legal tech space who have a sense for how you translate ideas into action and what's kind of in the market. And so in order to make this sort of workshop-oriented, unpanel type thing work, it has to be run in a very decentralized way. So you need all these like lieutenants running around with making the interstitial gaps kind of pull together and inject it with some market knowledge. And so it's just really, the luminaries we're calling them, is a really interesting cross-section of folks. And in the room, they've all brought a bunch of interesting people, and it's just fascinating to me.
Excellent. Well, I just have one last question for you, Christian. I know you got to get going. It's getting loud in here as everybody breaks out of their workshop. Just wanted to ask you, if our listeners who want to reach out, learn a little bit more about the conference, maybe some things that are coming up next, how can they find you?
Yeah, well, the easiest way is to just find us on the web. Our website is just inspire.legal. So the name is the URL as well. We're on Twitter at @inspire_legal. Follow our hashtags on social media. It's #InspireLegal. It'll give you a nice flavor of what's going on in the room, and that's probably the easiest way. And if you want to get in touch with me personally, you tweet at me or message me at christianllang.com, or you can hit me through my brand new job. I recently re-entered the workforce, which is a very unexpected development, but one that I'm very excited about.
Who are you working for now?
It's I'm the new head of strategy at Rain and Court.
Excellent.
And so you can reach me through the Rain and Court portal as well.
Well, we've reached the end of the road for today's episode, but I want to thank our guest, Christian Lang, for joining us. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Laurence.
I want to also thank our listeners for joining us, too, because without you, none of this happens. And so if you like what you heard, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting app. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.